There are no men left on this planet. The alien woman murmured to me. Leo wandered through the empty streets, the once bustling city now a ghost town. Buildings that had stood for centuries were now crumbling, overtaken by the wild forces of nature. He was alone, as he had been for weeks now, one of the last remaining men on Earth. The catastrophe that had swept across the planet had wiped out almost all of his kind, leaving only a handful of survivors scattered across the globe. The world that was once full of life and noise had become eerily silent. He adjusted the strap of his backpack, the weight of the few remaining supplies he had left weighing heavily on his shoulders. His boots crunched against the dried leaves and broken pavement, his steps echoing in the stillness. The sun was beginning to set, casting a pale orange glow over the ruined city. Leo had been searching for other survivors for days, but so far he had found no one, no family. No friends, just an endless sea of desolation. His thoughts were interrupted by a strange noise, faint but distinct, a soft rustling in the trees ahead. Leo froze, instinctively reaching for the rifle slung over his shoulder. He wasn't sure what to expect. It could be an animal, or worse, a hostile faction of survivors who had turned to violence in their desperation. He had learned the hard way not to trust anyone anymore. The world had changed, and so had the people in it. Cautiously he crept toward the sound, moving as silently as he could. His heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of adrenaline and fear flooding his veins. The rustling grew louder and Leo's grip tightened around the rifle. He rounded a corner, and that's when he saw her. She was standing in the middle of the street, a figure that seemed almost ethereal against the backdrop of the ruined city. She was tall, with an elegance that made her look out of place, as if she didn't belong in the wasteland of Earth. Her skin was a deep shade of violet, her hair flowing like liquid silver, and her eyes, bright, glowing, and otherworldly, stared at him with an intensity that made his breath catch in his throat. Leo hesitated, unsure whether he should approach or retreat. This was the first time he had seen anyone, let alone an alien, since the disaster struck. He couldn't help but wonder how she had arrived on Earth or what she wanted. The woman didn't seem threatening, but Leo knew better than to trust appearances. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice hoarse from days of silence. The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head as if studying him. Then, in a voice that was both soft and commanding, she spoke. "There are no men left on this planet," she murmured, almost as if to herself. The words sent a chill down Leo's spine. He had always known that he was one of the last of his kind, but hearing it from her, someone who seemed so far removed from the remnants of Earth, struck him harder than he expected. He couldn't help but feel a surge of bitterness rise within him. The last of humanity, reduced to nothing more than a statistic. "What do you want?" Leo asked, his voice more urgent now. "How did you get here? Where are the others?" The woman's gaze softened slightly, though her expression remained unreadable. "I've come to find what remains of your kind," she said slowly, as though weighing each word carefully. "My people need you." Leo's brow furrowed. Need us for what?" he asked, stepping forward cautiously. The woman's lips parted as if she were about to speak, but before she could continue, a distant rumble of thunder interrupted her. Leo looked up at the sky, noticing the dark clouds gathering above, an omen of the storm that was about to break. It wasn't safe to stay out in the open like this, especially not with an unknown alien who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. "I don't have much time," the woman said abruptly, her tone shifting from contemplative to urgent. "Come with me, we must leave this place." Leo hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether he should trust her. But the weight of his isolation pressed on him, the silence of the world around him unbearable. The woman seemed to be offering him something he hadn't had in months, a connection, a purpose. Maybe it was foolish, but Leo decided to follow her. He nodded, gripping his rifle tighter, and followed her through the streets. The woman moved with grace, her steps silent as she led him down alleys and through ruined buildings. It was clear that she knew where she was going, and despite his unease, Leo couldn't help but be captivated by her presence. She wasn't like anything he had ever seen, and her calm, composed demeanor only made her seem even more enigmatic. After what felt like hours of walking, they reached a large, crumbling structure that once might have been a museum or a library. The woman stopped in front of the entrance, turning to face Leo. "We are safe here," she said, her eyes meeting his. "At least for now." Leo looked up at the building, noting the strange symbols etched into the stone walls, alien markings that he couldn't decipher. The structure felt out of place, like it didn't belong on Earth. But in the world that had fallen apart, what could possibly make sense anymore? You still haven't told me who you are, Leo said, his curiosity growing despite himself. What do you want with me? The woman paused before answering. My name is Lyra, she said. I'm from the Scifi, an ancient race from beyond the stars, and I need you, Leo. His heart skipped a beat at the mention of his name. She knew who he was, but how? He had never seen her before, never even heard of the Scifi. This whole encounter was becoming more and more surreal by the second. I'm one of the last of my kind, Leo said, his voice tight. I'm not important, I'm just trying to survive. Lyra's gaze softened, and for the first time she stepped closer to him. You don't understand. The fate of my people depends on the survival of your kind. Leo's mind raced, trying to process what she had said. He had thought humanity's extinction was inevitable, that there was nothing left to fight for. But now, standing before this alien woman who seemed so certain, he felt a spark of hope ignite deep within him. The rain started to pour, heavy droplets falling from the sky, soaking both of them. Lyra didn't flinch as the rain soaked her, but Leo felt the coldness of it seep into his bones. He had no idea what she wanted, or why she needed him, but he knew one thing for certain. This encounter was only the beginning of something far bigger than he could imagine. As they stood there, the world seemed to shrink around them, leaving only the two of them standing amidst the ruins of Earth. And for the first time in a long while, Leo didn't feel so alone. Leo sat on a cracked stone bench inside the ruins, his rifle resting beside him. The rain outside had turned into a relentless downpour, and the sound of it hitting the ground was deafening. The building they were in, whatever it was before the disaster, had no roof, and the rainwater pooled in small streams at the edges of the cracked floor. The air smelled damp and earthy, a mixture of decay and the faint remnants of something forgotten long ago. Leo was aware of the alien woman, Lyra, standing beside him, her presence as enigmatic as ever. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had been thrust into something far beyond his understanding. He had thought himself alone, the last man on Earth. But now, here was this mysterious alien who claimed his survival was somehow tied to the future of her people. You still haven't told me what you want from me, Leo said, his voice breaking the heavy silence. He had been silent for too long, trying to process everything that had happened. His mind swirled with confusion. Why had she come to Earth? Why him? And what did his existence have to do with the survival of her people? Lyra, who had been standing near the shattered remains of what might have been a pillar, turned toward him. Her violet skin seemed to glow softly in the dim light. There was a calmness to her, a confidence in the way she carried herself, as though nothing could ever truly rattle her. Yet, despite her serene appearance, there was an intensity in her eyes, something that hinted at a deeper, unspoken burden. My people, the Scifi, have traveled across galaxies, searching for a new home, she began, her voice smooth and melodic. We have seen destruction, wars, and the downfall of entire civilizations, but we never thought we would face what we are facing now. Leo listened carefully, his attention fully captured by her words. He had never heard of such a race, nor their intergalactic travels. All he knew was the Earth he had grown up in, a place where humanity was supposed to be on top, but now lay in ruins. Why Earth? Why now? Leo asked. His voice carried a hint of disbelief. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. We didn't choose Earth, she said softly. We were sent here by fate, or perhaps by some cosmic force. Our ship crashed on your planet after we were forced to flee our dying world. Leo frowned. So you crashed here, and now you need my help? Lyra nodded. Yes, the Scifi have learned to manipulate DNA to extract and use the most potent genetic material. But our species is dying. We need the genetic diversity that only humanity can offer. You, Leo, are one of the last men remaining. You carry the potential for us to save our future. Leo's mind reeled with her words. The weight of her request hung heavy in the air between them. He had always known he was one of the last men on Earth, but to be told that his survival could be the key to another species, future, was something he couldn't fathom. I don't understand, he said, shaking his head. You're asking me to help you, but why me? Why not one of the other survivors? We've been scattered across the Earth. Surely there are others like me. Lyra's gaze softened. She stepped closer still, her voice lower. You misunderstand. It's not just about the men, Leo. It's about the compatibility, the strength of humanity's genetic code. The Scifi's can only restore our species by combining our DNA with that of humans, specifically the last of your kind. You are the one we've been waiting for. The implications of her words began to settle in. Leo had known that humanity's future seemed bleak, but this was something else entirely. He wasn't just a survivor. He was part of something larger, something he had never expected. His mind raced with questions, but one thing became clear to him. Lyra needed him in a way he couldn't yet comprehend. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Leo asked, his voice edged with frustration. "Why did you bring me here and just expect me to go along with this?" Lyra didn't flinch. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Leo noticed a flicker of vulnerability in her gaze. "I wasn't sure you would understand," she admitted quietly. "But now, I see you are not like the others. You are capable of understanding what needs to be done." Leo looked at her, his thoughts swirling. There was a part of him that wanted to reject everything she was saying. He had spent so long believing that humanity was doomed, that it was only a matter of time before the last of them faded away into the past. But here she was, standing before him, asking for his help to change that. To alter the fate of not just Earth, but an entire alien species. "I didn't ask for this," Leo said, his voice raw. "I just want to survive. I just want to find something that makes sense in this world of ruin." Lyra didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stepped back, her hands clasped behind her as if she were contemplating something deeply. Then, after a long pause, she spoke again. "I understand," she said softly. "Survival is all you have left, but sometimes survival isn't enough. Sometimes you must make a choice that will shape the future of not only your world, but others as well." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Leo didn't know what to say. The weight of her statement felt like it had shifted something inside him. He had lived in isolation for so long, fighting each day just to stay alive, just to hold on to whatever was left of his humanity. But now, in the face of Lyra's request, he was being asked to make a choice. A choice that could define not just his future, but the future of an entire race. "You're asking me to sacrifice everything?" Leo said, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra's eyes softened, and she stepped closer, her voice gentle. "Not everything, just enough. Enough for a chance at survival, for both your kind and mine." Leo stared at her, the tension in his chest building as he weighed her words. There was no way around it. His survival was no longer just about him. It was about something much larger. Something he couldn't quite grasp, but something he couldn't ignore either. "Give me time," Leo finally said, his voice steady. "I need to think about this." Lyra nodded. "Of course, take all the time you need, but know that the choice will soon be out of your hands. The Scifi's need your help, and we cannot wait much longer." Leo watched as she turned and walked toward the shadows at the back of the building, her form disappearing into the darkness. He sat there for a long time, his thoughts consumed by the weight of her words. The world outside was falling apart, and here he was, caught between the future of humanity and the fate of a species from the stars. He had always believed that he was the last man standing, but now he was something more, the last hope. And with that thought, the burden of responsibility pressed down on him harder than ever before. Leo stood in the ruins, staring at the distant horizon. The rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy with moisture. Everything around him seemed to be still and quiet, yet his mind was racing. The weight of Lyra's words had settled deep within him, gnawing at his thoughts. He had always believed that survival was the only thing that mattered. He had always lived each day just to see the next. But now everything was different. His survival was no longer just his own. It was tied to the future of humanity and, oddly enough, the future of an alien species. Lyra had told him he was important, special, even, but Leo wasn't sure if he believed her. How could one man, one survivor, hold the key to saving an entire species? How could his mere existence be so crucial? It felt like a weight too heavy for him to carry. But there was something else in the back of his mind, a spark of hope that refused to be snuffed out. Maybe there was something more to this, something bigger than the devastation that had claimed his world. He needed to know more. He needed answers. Leo stood up from the broken stone bench and walked over to where Lyra had gone. She had disappeared into the shadows of the building, her figure blending into the darkness. The silence was almost oppressive, the kind of silence that made you feel like you were the only living thing left in the world. But Lyra wasn't just any being. She was from a faraway world, someone who had seen things that Leo could never imagine. She was the one who had come to him, and he needed to understand why. He found her standing by what looked like an ancient control panel, covered in dust and debris. She was pressing buttons and adjusting levers as if she knew exactly what she was doing. Her concentration was absolute, and for a moment, Leo hesitated. He wasn't sure if he should disturb her, but then his curiosity got the better of him. "Lyra," he called out softly. She turned to face him, her glowing violet eyes catching the light as she looked him over. There was no judgment in her gaze, no expectation. Just an openness that made him feel like he could ask anything. "You said you came here to find me," Leo said. "Why me? Why not someone else? Why is my survival so important?" Lyra's expression softened, and she took a step toward him, the space between them growing smaller. She had a way of moving that made everything seem effortless, as if she didn't belong to this broken world at all. "Do you know what happened to Earth, Leo?" she asked, her voice quiet but strong. "Your planet was once thriving. Humanity reached for the stars, built cities, and created technology that could have taken you far beyond what you ever dreamed of. But then something happened, a disaster of unimaginable scale." Leo nodded slowly. He had heard the stories, the warnings. The Earth was dying, and humanity was struggling to hold on. He had always believed that humanity had caused its own downfall, that the mistakes of the past were now playing out in a world that had no room for hope. Lyra continued, "We, the Scifi, have traveled the universe for centuries. We've seen many worlds, many species, many civilizations rise and fall. Some died because of war, some because of disease, and some because they couldn't adapt to their changing worlds. But none of them faced the crisis that Earth is facing now. Your species has the potential to thrive once again, but that requires something unique, something that no other species has, and that is your genetic strength. The diversity and resilience in your DNA is unmatched. It's a rarity in the universe." Leo frowned, trying to wrap his mind around her words. "And my DNA is somehow going to save your people?" Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, we Scifi are a dying race. Our people once thrived, but we lost our ability to reproduce. We tried everything, biotechnology, genetic manipulation, but nothing worked. That's when we began to study other species. Earth was our last hope, and when we found your species, we knew we had to act quickly." Leo felt a strange mix of emotions rising inside him: confusion, awe, and a growing sense of responsibility that he wasn't sure he was ready for. He had spent his whole life struggling just to survive. He had never thought he would be anything more than just another survivor, another forgotten soul in a dying world. But now, he was being asked to carry the future of two species on his shoulders. "You said I'm the last man standing," Leo said, his voice quieter now. "Does that mean I'm the only one left who can do this?" Lyra hesitated for a moment before answering, her eyes avoiding his. "You are not the only one, but you are one of the strongest. The Scifi need someone who can withstand the process, someone who is resilient enough to survive what comes next. You are the one we've been searching for." Leo took a step back, his thoughts swirling. He had never asked for this. He had never imagined that he would play such an important role in the future of not only his people, but the Scifi as well. His entire life had been about survival, about keeping himself alive in a world that seemed intent on erasing him. But now that survival seemed to mean something more. He could feel the weight of it pressing down on him, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to carry it. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, his voice low. "I've spent my whole life fighting just to live. And now you're telling me I'm supposed to be the key to saving both of our species." Lyra moved closer, her presence calming despite the weight of the situation. "You don't have to do this alone, Leo. I will be with you every step of the way. The Scifi will help you, guide you, but it's your choice. You have the power to decide what happens next." Leo stared at her, his mind racing. He could feel the pull of destiny, the sense that everything had been leading up to this moment. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring him here, to this point where everything could change. But the fear and doubt still lingered inside him. Could he truly carry the weight of two civilizations on his shoulders? Was he strong enough to do what was being asked of him? For the first time in a long time, Leo didn't feel alone. There was something about Lyra, about her calm strength and her unwavering belief in him, that made him feel like he wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was part of something larger. And maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference. "I'll do it," Leo said finally, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his heart. "I'll help you. Lyra smiled, and for the first time, Leo saw something softer in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know what this means to both of us." Leo nodded, a sense of resolve settling in him. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead would not be easy. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was part of something worth fighting for. Leo sat on the edge of the old stone building, looking out over the horizon. The sky had turned a deep shade of purple as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the ruined city. His mind was still racing with everything Lyra had told him, the responsibility he now carried, and the path he had chosen to take. The air was cool, the wind picking up as night fell, but Leo barely felt it. It was hard to feel anything except the weight of his decision. He had agreed to help her. He had agreed to help the Scifi's, but what did that really mean? He had lived through the end of the world, had seen everything he once knew crumble to dust, and now he was being asked to be the key to saving two species. It was overwhelming. Part of him still wondered if he was doing the right thing, if he even could do the right thing. Lyra had told him that his DNA held the potential to save her people. She had explained it all, how the Scifi's had lost their ability to reproduce, how their planet was dying, and how they had turned to Earth, hoping that humanity's genetic diversity would be the answer to their problems. It all made sense, logically. But in his heart, Leo still wasn't sure. He was just one man. Could one man really save them all? "Leo," Lyra's voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned and saw her standing a few steps away, her violet eyes glowing softly in the dim light. She was looking at him with a mixture of concern and something else, something Leo couldn't quite place. "Are you okay?" she asked, taking a step closer. Leo stood up, dusting off his jacket as he looked at her. He didn't want to admit how heavy the weight on his shoulders felt. He didn't want to show her how much doubt still lingered in his mind. But he couldn't lie to her, not now. "I don't know," he said, his voice quiet. "This is all a lot to take in. I've spent my whole life just trying to survive. Now I'm supposed to be the reason you can save your people." Lyra stepped forward, her expression softening. "I know it's a lot, but you don't have to carry this burden alone, Leo. You're not just a survivor anymore, you're part of something much bigger. You have the power to make a difference." Her words, though comforting, didn't ease the anxiety building in his chest. He had spent years fighting for his own survival, watching as the world around him disintegrated. And now here he was, standing at the crossroads of a new future, one he hadn't chosen for himself. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about humanity's survival and the survival of a race he knew almost nothing about. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted. "I'm just a man, I'm not a hero." Lyra's gaze softened, and she reached out to gently touch his arm. "You don't have to be a hero, you just have to be you. Your strength, your resilience, your humanity, those are the things that make you important, and that's all we need." Leo looked into her eyes, and for the first time he saw the weight she carried. She wasn't just some alien looking for help. She had been through more than he could imagine, had seen the destruction of her people and her world. She wasn't asking him to be perfect. She was asking him to do what was right, to take a chance on a future they both needed. "I don't know what's going to happen next," Leo said, his voice steadier now, "but I'm in, I'll help you." Lyra smiled, and for a moment Leo saw a flicker of something like relief in her eyes. It was fleeting, but it was there. She stepped back and nodded. "Thank you, Leo," she said softly. "You've made the right choice. The first step is always the hardest. But together we'll make sure we don't just survive, we'll thrive." As night settled over the ruins, Leo and Lyra turned their attention back to the building they had been inside. There was work to do. The Scifi's would need more than just his DNA. They would need knowledge, resources, and a plan to ensure that humanity's future, what little of it remained, was not lost. Leo had already seen what destruction could do. Now he was about to see what rebuilding might take. They had to act quickly. There was no time to waste. Lyra led him to a darkened corner of the building where the remains of a control panel blinked weakly. She began adjusting the buttons and switches, and slowly, the dim lights inside the room flickered to life. On one of the screens, a map of the world appeared, showing areas where humanity's last survivors were located. "Your people are scattered," Lyra said, "but there are still groups out there, small communities, families, even some who have organized into factions. We need to find them, gather them, and bring them here. If we're going to move forward, we need to unite humanity." Leo studied the map, his finger tracing the lines and points that marked the survivors. It was a grim picture. Humanity had been reduced to pockets of people barely holding on, fighting to survive in a world that had turned against them. It seemed impossible to bring them all together, but if there was any chance, this was it. "I can't do this alone," Leo said, turning to Lyra. "We need more than just my blood. We need trust. We need hope." Lyra nodded. "That's why we need you, Leo. You're not just a survivor, you're a symbol, and we can use that. You've lived through the worst, and now you have the chance to lead others towards something better." Leo felt a weight in his chest at her words. He didn't feel like a leader. He had never wanted to lead anyone. But he knew she was right. If he didn't step up, who would? If he didn't try, the future would remain in the dark. "I'll do what I can," Leo said, his voice firm. "We'll find them, we'll unite them, and we'll make sure this world doesn't die in vain." Lyra smiled again, a true smile this time, and for the first time, Leo felt like they were a team. He wasn't in this alone. They were both fighting for the same thing, survival, but also something more. Hope. The first rays of dawn broke through the dark clouds, casting a faint glow over the ruins. The world was still, as it always seemed to be in the morning, but today felt different. Leo stood at the edge of the building, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He had always found comfort in the quiet moments, the ones where the world seemed to pause just for a breath. But now that stillness felt like a weight pressing down on him, reminding him of everything that was at stake. Lyra stood beside him, her presence a constant in the chaos that had become his life. She too was staring out at the same horizon, though her gaze was far away, as if she could see something beyond the ruins of Earth. Something hopeful, something he couldn't yet see. "Today is the day," Leo said quietly, his voice barely rising above the wind. Lyra turned to look at him, her violet eyes softening. "Yes," she said, her tone steady. "Today we begin to rebuild." Leo had never been one to lead. He had always been a lone survivor, someone who kept his head down and focused on getting through the next day. But now that survival instinct had to give way to something else, something bigger. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was part of something that could change the course of two species' futures. The map Lyra had shown him the day before was still fresh in his mind. He could see the scattered dots representing humanity's last survivors, each one a tiny beacon of life in a world that seemed to have forgotten the value of hope. There were people out there, hiding, struggling, living, but they were alone, and that was the thing he had to fix. Alone, humanity would die, but together there was a chance. He had to bring them together. Lyra had offered her assistance, her advanced technology, and her knowledge of the Scifi's, but Leo knew that in the end it was up to him. He had to lead the survivors, bring them into a single place, and unite them under a common cause. It was the only way to rebuild, the only way to save Earth and the Scifi's. "Where do we start?" Leo asked, breaking the silence between them. Lyra turned to face him fully now, her expression resolute. "There is a group near the old city. I've been tracking them for weeks. They're hiding, waiting for someone to lead them. You can help them see that there is more to live for than just surviving." Leo nodded. He had known that the first step would be the hardest. There was no guarantee that anyone would follow him, no guarantee that anyone would believe in what he was offering. But he had to try, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of everything that had been lost. "Let's go," Leo said, his voice steady with purpose. The journey to the old city was long and dangerous. The streets were overrun with wild animals, and the remnants of civilization were barely recognizable. But it wasn't the danger that weighed on Leo's mind. It was the uncertainty. Would these survivors listen to him? Would they follow him? Or would he be just another voice lost in the wind, drowned out by the noise of a dying world? As they walked, Leo couldn't help but notice the difference in Lyra. She had been calm and collected, always the one in control, but now there was something else in her demeanor, something softer. Maybe it was the weight of their mission, or maybe it was the hope that Leo had brought with him. Whatever it was, it made her seem more human than ever before. And in that moment, Leo realized something. She wasn't just an alien. She was someone who had been through her own struggles, her own pain. She had seen her world die. She understood loss in a way that few others could. They arrived at the outskirts of the old city by nightfall. The buildings, once towering symbols of human achievement, were now nothing more than skeletal remains, their glass windows shattered, their metal frames rusted and weak. The streets were empty, save for the occasional flicker of movement in the shadows. Leo's grip on his rifle tightened as he scanned the area, looking for signs of life. Lyra was silent beside him, her eyes darting around as she took in their surroundings. She didn't seem nervous, though Leo felt a tightening in his chest. The city was deserted, but he knew that didn't mean it was safe. The survivors might be close, but they could be hiding, unwilling to trust anyone who came near. "Stay close," Leo whispered, motioning for Lyra to follow him. They made their way through the ruined streets, careful not to make any unnecessary noise. Leo's heart was pounding in his chest, his senses heightened as they moved deeper into the city. The longer they walked, the more he could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on him. He wasn't just looking for survivors. He was looking for people who had given up, who had lost hope. He was looking for people who might not trust him, who might resist everything he had to offer. As they approached an old shopping center, Leo heard the sound of footsteps, soft, hesitant, but unmistakable. He motioned for Lyra to stay behind him as he approached the entrance, his rifle raised. His mind raced, wondering what kind of people he would encounter. Would they be like him, tired, broken, and lost? Or would they be the ones who still had something left to fight for? Leo pushed open the door cautiously, his eyes scanning the dim interior. He caught sight of a group of people huddled in the far corner, their faces drawn and tired, their clothes ragged and torn. There were 5 of them, all looking as if they had been living in fear for far too long. Their eyes locked onto Leo, suspicion evident in every glance. "Who are you?" one of them asked, his voice rough and wary. Leo lowered his rifle slowly, trying to appear less threatening. "I'm Leo, I've come to help." The man didn't lower his weapon. "Help how? There's no help for people like us." Leo took a deep breath, his voice calm but firm. "I know what it's like to feel like there's no hope, but I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm here to give you something, a chance to rebuild. We need to come together, all of us. If we want to survive, we have to unite. There's more to fight for than just living. There's hope. And I'm offering you that hope." For a moment, no one spoke. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Leo could see the doubt in their eyes, the fear that had kept them from trusting anyone for so long. But there was something else there, too, a flicker of hope, a spark that hadn't been completely extinguished. Finally, the man who had spoken stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "You're asking us to believe in something that hasn't existed in a long time." Leo nodded. "I know it's hard, but I believe we can make it work, together." The silence stretched on for a few moments before the man nodded slowly, his face softening. "All right," he said quietly. "We'll follow you, but if you lead us into another dead end, we won't hesitate to leave." Leo exhaled, relief washing over him. They were willing to listen. They were willing to try, and that was all he needed. "Thank you," Leo said, his voice steady now. "We're not just surviving anymore, we're building a future." As the group began to move out of the shopping center, Leo glanced at Lyra. She gave him a small smile, the first real smile he had seen from her in days. There was hope in her eyes now, hope that had been absent before. And for the first time since everything had fallen apart, Leo felt like he wasn't just surviving, he was part of something bigger. They were all part of something bigger. The journey was just beginning. But as they left the ruins behind them, moving toward a future that was uncertain and fragile, Leo couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. A chance for survival. A chance for something more,